Welcome to this video. Great that you stopped by. With this video, I will give you a brief introduction about the challenges and chances on gender and innovation. My name is Birkner. I'm a junior professor for female entrepreneurship. I research and teach about all aspects that foster innovation through gender and that support the intention of those that will do innovation on gender aspects. In my daily work, I work with those entrepreneurs that will be challenged by tasks we don't know today, that will have to innovate technologies we will need in future, and we have no clue about the problems that will be raised by society. Why do I think that this video is important? From my perspective, it is important for experts as well as those who first time touch the topic. You're an expert? Wonderful. With this video, I will give you some critical indications from my perspective on gender innovation that might further your own approach. First time you touch the field? No problem. That's perfect as well. Because then I can give you some critical insights on what will challenge and change our own work on gender and innovation. We need those innovations if we want to sustain in the world, and we will work there socially and ecologically as well as economically sustainable, then we need more innovation. The problem is we have a lot of ideas. We just make one little out of this bulb really work. Do we need to have the talk, the sex talk? I think we need that. First of all, I would like to talk about the claim of importance of why to research and teach gender innovation. Further on, I will talk about two definitions, one on gender and one on sex. About challenges of integrating, I will give you 3 examples on how gender and innovation discourses are kind of sometimes obstacles in our work. 4 chances are there as well, which is already good if we have one more chance than 1 challenges, on how we can consider gender in our work on research, in our practical approaches on innovation. And further on, I would like to give you 5 implications on how you can walk the talk on gender and innovation. Did you know we are living in the most transformational times in humankind? Science fiction is becoming actually science facts. And megatrends are creating enormous social storms of change. For example, our planet is running out of room and resources. Already today, we need 1.6 of our Earth. And by 2050, we will need already 3 Earths to survive. How can this be possible? If we want to survive, we need to innovate. And not only because of this reason. Health innovations start to fall back on us. For example, in the reason of antibiotics, we see that we needed so much of that by now they are not doing the job anymore. And if we look at the demographic change, we see that we don't have the resources to care of those that build our future. Further on, if we look at how people lived, during the 19th century, that was about 15% that lived in cities. Today, it's more than 50%. The amount of technical innovation, and technical knowledge that we build on is doubling like every 2 years. And the number of Internet of Things devices has been like in 1984 about 1,000. In 2008 it was already 1 billion, and today it's more than 23 billion of devices. So the way how we live and work, it's changing rapidly. Today's week's worth of a well-known newspaper is more than a person in his or her whole life in the 18th century could approach. So it's not only that it's changing what the technology information gives us as opportunities to innovate, the way how we make our living is changing as well. And if we look back how we make our living today, we know that we need to change because it's not sustainable, neither socially nor ecologically. Why do we need to talk about sex? And why do I consider that we do need to have the talk? But let's talk about sex and gender. If we look at my field of research, for example, for aspects of entrepreneurial intention, men entrepreneurs significantly outnumber women entrepreneurs. Those out there that are open to innovate, that have the idea that they can become entrepreneurs, somehow are more men than women. By that, we lack a whole potential of almost 50% of those out there that could support the way how we find now innovations, new ways how we can tackle those societal challenges. Beside that, we learn a lot more about entrepreneurial ecosystems. That somehow it's not only the intention of women entrepreneurs that we don't foster enough, that they are treated really differently. For example, if we look at the venture capital side, we learned just recently that women not only get less money, or seldom get all venture capital, they are actually asked totally different questions. While we ask men to win, we ask women not to lose. Men are asked questions of promotion, what they can do, that their great idea will make it to the next unicorn. Women are asked questions of what they do to lower the risk. In the end, men are asked to tell a positive story. Women are asked to tell them what will not happen in aspects of failure. By that, of course, everyone working with storytelling will have the impression that hearing a positive or hearing a negative story will definitely rule who will decide into what directions. But this is just one side of the coin. If we talk about gender innovation, we not only talk about who's the person who innovates, and that we do have a sex bias between men and women who are those innovating our future. We as well have a gender bias. But what is the difference between sex and gender? Isn't this somehow the same? Don't we just talk about men and women and they are somehow feminine and masculine? No, not at all. That's a total different story, and a story of importance. If we talk about sex, we just talk about biological differences, those that we really find in our genes. If we talk about gender, we talk about socially constructed differences, about aspects that are different in how we see people, about those stereotypes that help us, that our brain does not simply implode because we need those stereotypes. From the first perspective, stereotypes, like gender, are not negative at all. They just help us to interact. They give us an idea how we want to approach whom. Stereotypes like femininity or masculinity, of how we think someone is, female or masculine, help us. They are just negative if they are biased. If we consider like running like a girl becomes to a negative impulse, or throwing like a girl. This is all socially aspect that somehow in one point we learn from research that one stereotype of gender is not seen as positive as the other. This is something that changed during our life. As soon as we get older than 10, we start to have gender as a central aspect of our identity. And this is important for entrepreneurship as well as innovation. Simply because if like the best idea of a successful, good entrepreneur is the idea of a white, middle-aged, masculine person. By this, we lack a whole of potential. If we look at what has been discussed during the last decades or centuries, or has been seen in society of successful entrepreneurship, that has been a story of men. And by that, we lack a potential, a huge potential. And this becomes a problem, because research tells us, and we learn from science, that the discourse on womanhood and entrepreneurship is dissonant, meaning that what we know about womanhood does not fit our idea of successful entrepreneurship. We end up with a lack of fit of what is female and what is entrepreneurial. And by this, the intention that we see in the significant numbers in sex somehow is an issue of gender, because we often see that sex and gender are linked. Not all women are definitely feminine oriented, and not all men are masculine oriented. For example, in just recent studies, we found out sex does not play a role in education. It's about, have you a masculine attitude that you become an entrepreneur? Definitely. If your attention is more masculine, you have more the idea that you can become an entrepreneur. So we need to work on this bias if we look at who is becoming an entrepreneur. So research on gendered entrepreneurship and innovation is developing from a historical, ignored issue, more or less, to a road less traveled. There is a lot to do to learn why women and those that have more a feminine orientation do not see themselves as entrepreneurs, do not see themselves as those that will build the future of our planet and of our society. On top of that, gender has become a construct of its own potential to enrich innovation in research and practice, just because it is an aspect that is not only a problem in who's the innovator, it is as well an option on what is the problem in the product itself. So let's have a look at the challenges at the crossroads of gender and innovation. When we look at gender and innovation, we can't ignore the people behind it. We have to have a look at the innovators. Because when people are not visible in the discourse, gender easily becomes invisible. And this is the problem with innovation research. We talk a lot about the products, how we can better innovate new technologies. We talk a lot about the process, how and what we need to use to innovate. What are good tools? What are good approaches? What are good attempts to innovate? And to innovate what? But what is about the who? And we can't see the who, we don't see gender. If we don't research the persons who innovate, we can't talk about gender. Or can't we? We do. We can't talk about the second challenge if we look at the product. Because when we think about gender and innovation, we often have the first impulse just to pink it and shrink it. This is the second challenge. Gender and innovation is not just about making products and designs pink. It's more about the idea what really needs to be changed if we consider gender and sex. If you really put gender and sex analysis in the process of innovation, if they become part of the product. So with the first challenge that we need to consider more deeply the person of who is innovating when talking about gendered entrepreneurship, we secondly need to look deeper in the idea of gender and sex analysis and products. Let me give you a short example out of the field of medical health research. Long years drug analysis started in the clinical phases with just male mice, proceeding in research studies just with men. The problem is that we do have a lot of drugs that men and women react differently on. So we need more studies that consider sex analysis in their research. Besides that, like if we look at gender aspects, for example, as well in the healthcare system, female or masculine person like those persons that have more a feminine attitude or those that have more a masculine attitude, they talk differently about how they feel pain. They rate differently how much they feel it. So in the interaction of patients and their doctors, they need to consider as well if they prescribe drugs, if there's more feminine or a masculine attitude in there. A further example out of more of the engineering fields is how we build in further years crash test dummies. They've never been pregnant, actually. So with all those crash tests, we in the end put into like problems those that either has a different stature and especially those that carried our future. So putting sex and gender analysis not into innovating processes will give us the challenges that we do not only lack business opportunities, but that we do really hinder new technology and new society changes, and that will foster our own future. The third challenge is, when innovating with the focus on stereotypes, overemphasizing gender can become an issue. What do I mean by this? First, letting you know we need to talk about sex, that we need to have the talk about gender as well. Yes, we do. But doing gender and innovation is just one part of the story. In some instances, we have really to consider if undoing gender, that we put out stereotypes, isn't an option as well. For example, if you look at the care of kids, how they're treated, how we educate them, we do have a strong form of femininity in there. So considering during the whole process of innovation, of product design, and the idea, what is the value proposition of a product or a service, sometimes needs to undo gender as well. So gender equality is an aspect for innovation, to really be fair and integrating all aspects and all perspectives. But gender equity means as well that we need to put not everyone on the same position, but see and understand who's not starting from the same point. So to sum up this point on challenges on gender innovation, we need to do 3 things to foster this. Consider the person, his or her sex and gender. If we talk about gendered entrepreneurship, those people that are building on our future. And if you're open to put gender in the idea of how you innovate, don't shrink it to pink. Consider when, and by this build on the third challenge, it is needed that gender is done or undone. If you're falling back on stereotypes or if you're even building new ones. We talked about, and you heard about a bit, about my perspective on gender and innovation. There has been a huge project initiated at the Stanford University about gendered innovations. Because with this bias in medical research, with this bias in engineering, it's not only a societal challenge that we need to trigger, it's as well a research potential we do not make use of. So those challenges I just raised are actually all those chances we have for the future of innovation, research and practice. For example, it adds a meaningful, valuable dimension to research for taking it in new directions. If you integrate gender analysis as well as sex analysis as a matter form of applying all ideas on what you research on extra, you will see new perspective. You will have new indications on whatever you do. It can be in engineering. It can be in medical health issues. It can be in humanities and social sciences. Whatever you do, and if you question, does sex and gender rule what I do? Or is it somehow stereotyped? Then you add in new perspectives. And by every new perspective you question in your research, you will get new insights. The second chance is that we identify new markets and new business opportunities. Not if we fall back on the challenge to just pink it and shrink it, but if we really have new insights and use the technology transfer out of this gendered innovation research and out of those sex analysis, we have products that really help us to foster all those ideas that will give us the chance for a sustainable, in the meaning of socially, ecologically and economically fair living in this world. That it will not be 3 Earths we need in 2050, that we have a chance to survive. So new business opportunities, new innovations, it's not only a question of success in the meaning of growth, it's the idea of ungrowth as well. How can we learn from gender and sex analysis how we need to have new perspectives of how our economies can be built on? Thirdly, by developing new technologies, responds to the needs of a diverse society. So if we talk about gendered innovation, that's just one part of diversity in innovation, but an important one. So if we talk about intersectional approaches, we can't forget gender analysis. So if we have just white, middle-aged men that build on our future by innovation, they will of course lack perspectives. If those that make our market analysis or those that we question at our customers fall into the same group, our products and all those healthcare systems we will develop will not treat everyone equal. So gendered innovation is an important approach to have a diverse future built on society. And fourth, the chance is, by all that, we enhance the sustainability by new processes, concepts and tools. Because innovation is not only about products or services, it's as well about technologies, concepts and tools that support sex and gender analysis in how we do foster and sustain an entrepreneurial intention of those out there that will build our future. Those that don't know their tasks, those that need to solve problems we as well do not know yet. So in the end, although we talked about 3 challenges and about 4 chances, altogether it's 7. Altogether it's 7 ideas on what we can do to build on the future and integrate gender in innovation, research and practice. So but talking about gendered innovation is just one simple part of it. The challenge is to walk the talk. How can you do this? And I promise to give you 5 ideas from my perspective of how you can walk the talk as well. First, most important point is that you stimulate gender-responsible science, technology, transfer and education. This is simply be done by questioning yourself, questioning your team, questioning your strategic partners. Does sex and gender play a role? Have we considered it? What are points where we do need to have a gender-sensitive language approach? What is kind of fair language in our daily work? Do we miss business opportunities by not considering gender? So in all our creativity and design tools, we should integrate gender and sex analysis as a form of creating new knowledge. From my perspective, this keep on questioning yourself, your team and your strategic partner is and always will be the most important point of gender and sex analysis. Questioning what new perspectives, having new insights and indications on what kind of analysis with these perspectives gives rise to new business opportunities, new technologies and new ideas of what we need to research in future. So from my perspective, 2 research questions, 2 business questions, 2 innovation questions are most important when considering gender in your daily work. First hand, you should have a look back into your history of what you have done before. Because all what you have done before can be enhanced by integrating gender and sex analysis even today. So what research and business opportunities have been missed by failing to understand sex and gender factors influencing a project? So whatever you have done before, just put an extra gender and sex perspective on it, and you will raise new research questions and business opportunities. And history is not only on one track. The second thing is, from today on, just make this question: does sex and or gender play a role in how I innovate in research or practice? Make this become your daily question. Because what and how would your project look like if you navigate your gender assumptions, perceptions and biases from today on and in future? So learn from history what you have failed and see how you can create in future. And by that, you as well walk the talk on gendered innovation. And by this, you will be one of those 3 builders of future, of a good, sustainable future. I promised you 5 implications of how to walk the talk on gendered innovation. The 5th one is something I learned during my walk the talk on gender in innovation, research and practice. And those experiences I made can be summed up in 3 quotes. The first one is from Peter Drucker. The best way to predict the future is to build it. No one of you out there needs to be an expert in gender studies. All you need to do is really just questioning again how you can create innovative awareness through gender and sex analysis. That's something all of you can do in your daily work. The second quote I want to share with you is something that comes out of the stories of Pippi Longstocking. She's one of the most entrepreneurial persons I know. She said, like in one of her stories, out of this attitude she practices in her daily life: I've never done that before. I'm absolutely sure I can do it. Because all you can do on your walk the talk journey of gendered innovation is learn what kinds of tools you need to learn, what kinds of methods and approaches you would like to integrate on your way to do innovation, research and practice. The third quote I would like to share is one of Mutter Teresa. She once said, I can do something you can't do. You can do something I cannot do. Together we can do great things. Together those 3 quotes are for me those approaches we need to build on our walk the talk future story of gendered innovations. Be open and trust in our opportunity, our skills and our mindsets that through gender and sex analysis we can build on our future. That we are learning on this journey and that we are allowed to learn on this journey. That we don't need to be expert in this, but we become once expert. And that none of us needs to be alone on this journey. Because together, if we build on research and practice in gendered innovation, this story will become great. I wish you a lot of fun and success in Walk the Talk on gendered innovation.